The Flower Wars, ritualized combat and political strategy. The sacred battlefield. In the carefully manicured plains of Quat Chan, where morning mist rose from perfectly level ceremonial grounds that had been prepared according to ancient protocols governing honorable combat, the war drums of the Aztec Empire announced the commencement of another Soki Miquistli, a flower war, whose ritualized violence would serve multiple strategic purposes while maintaining the sacred traditions that transformed military conflict into cosmic drama, where warriors competed not merely for territorials, conquest, but for divine favor and social honor. The concept of flower wars represented one of the most sophisticated developments in Mesoamerican military doctrine, combining practical military training with religious observance, while enabling imperial expansion through controlled conflict that avoided the complete destruction of potential tributary states and their valuable populations, resources, and cultural contributions that could enhance Aztec civilization through integration rather than annihilation. The strategic genius that underlied the flower war system reflected Tlacaelel's revolutionary vision of imperial expansion that could maximize territorial control and tribute collection, while minimizing the administrative burden and defensive vulnerabilities that would result from attempting to directly govern every conquered territory through permanent military occupation and colonial administration, requiring enormous resources and personnel. The participants in today's combat included elite warriors from Tenochtitlan representing the Aztec Empire, experienced fighters from Tlaxcala defending their independent confederation, and selected champions from Cholula, demonstrating their continuing autonomy within the Aztec sphere of influence, while all three forces adhered to carefully negotiated rules that governed legitimate warfare and distinguished honorable combat from mere banditry or genocidal conquest. The ceremonial preparation that preceded actual combat included elaborate rituals performed by priest warriors from all participating armies, while divine authorization was sought through astronomical observation and religious ceremonies that confirmed appropriate cosmic conditions for engaging in sacred warfare that would please rather than offend the deities whose favor was essential for successful military outcomes and social prosperity. The battlefield demarcation that defined legitimate combat zones included clearly marked boundaries where fighting could occur according to established protocols, while ensuring that civilian populations and sacred sites remained protected from military violence that might disrupt economic activities, religious observances, and social relationships essential for maintaining civilized existence despite ongoing political conflicts and military competition. The temporal limitations that governed flower war duration included agreement that combat would continue for predetermined periods, ranging from single-day engagements to week-long campaigns, while ensuring that agricultural activities, trade relationships, and religious festivals could proceed without excessive disruption that might threaten economic prosperity and social stability for participating communities. The weapons restrictions that defined legitimate military equipment included prohibition of certain types of deadly weapons, while emphasizing capture-oriented combat techniques and equipment designed to disable rather than kill enemy warriors, whose value as sacrificial victims or skilled laborers far exceeded their worth as corpses littering battlefields that served ceremonial rather than purely destructive purposes. The victory conditions that determined successful outcomes focused on prisoner capture rather than territorial conquest or enemy annihilation, while establishing point systems that rewarded individual warrior prowess and unit coordination in achieving tactical objectives that demonstrated military superiority without requiring permanent occupation or administrative integration of defeated territories. The post-combat protocols that governed treatment of prisoners and wounded included medical care for injured warriors, ceremonial exchange of captured enemies, and diplomatic negotiations regarding tribute obligations and political relationships that would govern future interactions between participating states while maintaining respect for enemy dignity and cultural autonomy within imperial frameworks. The cultural exchange opportunities that resulted from flower war relationships included adoption of superior military techniques, sharing of technological innovations, and diplomatic marriages that strengthened political alliances while enabling peaceful transfer of knowledge and skills that could benefit all participating civilizations through cooperative rather than purely competitive relationships. The economic benefits that emerged from regularized flower war conflicts included reduced costs of maintaining large standing armies, protection of trade relationships that generated crucial revenue, and preservation of productive populations whose labor and tribute could support imperial prosperity while avoiding the devastating economic losses that resulted from total warfare and territorial devastation. The strategy of controlled conflict. The strategic doctrine that guided flower war Implementation reflected sophisticated understanding of imperial expansion that could achieve political dominance without incurring the enormous costs and administrative challenges associated with direct territorial conquest and permanent military occupation of resistant populations whose continued autonomy served imperial interests better than forcible integration through violent suppression of local institutions and cultural traditions. The diplomatic framework that enabled flower war arrangements included complex negotiations between imperial representatives and local authorities regarding combat schedules, participant selection, victory conditions, and post-conflict obligations, while establishing protocols that could maintain honorable relationships between competing powers despite ongoing military competition and political rivalry that required careful management to prevent escalation into total warfare. The military training benefits that accrued from regular flower war participation included maintenance of combat readiness during peacetime periods when traditional warfare might be unavailable for honing fighting skills, opportunities for testing new tactical innovations and weapon systems under realistic combat conditions, and systematic evaluation of individual warrior capabilities that could inform promotion decisions and unit assignments within professional military hierarchies. The prisoner acquisition objectives that motivated flower war participation included securing adequate supplies of sacrificial victims for major religious festivals whose proper celebration required substantial numbers of enemy warriors whose hearts could nourish the gods and whose blood could maintain cosmic balance, while also obtaining skilled captives whose labor could contribute to imperial construction projects, agricultural activities, and craft production. The intelligence-gathering opportunities that flower wars provided included direct observation of enemy military capabilities, tactical innovations, and leadership qualities under actual combat conditions, while enabling assessment of political relationships, economic resources, and social cohesion that could inform future diplomatic initiatives or military campaigns against targeted territories and their allies. The alliance testing mechanisms that flower war conflicts enabled included evaluation of loyalty and military cooperation among tributary states and allied communities whose performance during ritualized combat could reveal their reliability during serious military emergencies, while providing opportunities for strengthening relationships through shared military experiences and mutual respect earned through honorable combat. The territorial influence expansion that resulted from successful flower war campaigns included establishment of imperial prestige and military reputation that could facilitate future diplomatic negotiations while demonstrating Aztec military superiority to potential enemies and allies whose decisions regarding tribute payments, alliance relationships, and resistance activities could be influenced by regular displays of imperial power. The economic warfare capabilities that flower war systems enabled included strategic targeting of enemy trade relationships, agricultural activities, and craft production through carefully timed military pressure that could force favorable diplomatic agreements while avoiding the complete economic devastation that would eliminate potential sources of tribute and reduce overall imperial wealth through destruction of productive capacity. The Maoist psychological warfare effects that emerged from regular flower war activities included creation of constant military pressure that could undermine enemy morale and political cohesion while demonstrating imperial determination and military capability to populations throughout Mesoamerica whose awareness of Aztec power could influence their decisions regarding resistance, accommodation, and tribute obligations. The diplomatic leverage enhancement that successful flower war performance provided included strengthened negotiating positions during territorial disputes, trade agreements, and tribute arrangements while establishing military credibility that could support imperial demands and prevent challenges to Aztec authority from ambitious local rulers seeking to exploit perceived weaknesses or imperial distractions. The cultural legitimization functions that flower war traditions served included demonstration of imperial commitment to honorable warfare and respectful treatment of worthy enemies, while maintaining religious and ethical frameworks that distinguished legitimate imperial expansion from mere conquest and exploitation that violated traditional Mesoamerican values regarding proper relationships between competing political authorities. The succession preparation activities that flower wars enabled included training of royal heirs and noble youth in military leadership, while providing opportunities for demonstrating personal courage and tactical competence that could establish legitimacy and popular support for future rulers whose authority required validation through successful military performance and demonstrated ability to protect imperial interests. The warrior's honor code, the elaborate ethical framework that governed individual conduct during flower war combat, included detailed specifications regarding legitimate fighting techniques, proper treatment of defeated enemies, and appropriate responses to victory or defeat, while establishing moral principles that distinguished honorable warriors from mere killers and created cultural expectations that elevated military service above simple violence through dedication to cosmic and social purposes. The combat regulations that defined acceptable warrior behavior included prohibition of attacks against non-combatants, respect for ceremonial protocols that preceded and concluded fighting, and adherence to weapon restrictions that emphasized skill and courage over technological advantages while ensuring that flower war conflicts maintained their sacred character rather than degenerating into chaotic violence that served no beneficial purpose for participating communities. The capture techniques that dominated flower war tactical training included specialized grappling methods designed to disable enemy warriors without causing fatal injuries, coordinated team approaches that could overwhelm individual opponents through superior numbers and tactical coordination, and equipment modifications that enhanced prisoner-taking capabilities while demonstrating warrior skill through successful completion of challenging capture missions. The prisoner treatment protocols that governed post-combat activities included medical care for wounded captives, ceremonial recognition of enemy courage and fighting ability, and respectful transportation to designated destinations where captured warriors would fulfill their ultimate purpose as sacrificial victims, whose deaths would honor both their own valor and the divine forces that govern cosmic balance and universal harmony. The individual advancement systems that rewarded successful flower war performance included elaborate ranking hierarchies based on numbers and quality of captured enemies, ceremonial recognition through special titles and insignia that marked warrior achievements, and social privileges that elevated successful fighters within community hierarchies while providing incentives for continued military excellence and dedication to imperial service. The training methodologies that prepared warriors for flower war participation included rigorous physical conditioning that emphasized strength, speed, and endurance necessary for effective combat performance, psychological preparation that could maintain fighting effectiveness despite fear and confusion of battle, and tactical instruction that covered both individual fighting skills and unit coordination techniques essential for successful mission completion. The equipment specifications that defined proper flower war armament included standardized weapons that emphasized capture rather than killing capabilities, protective gear that balanced combat effectiveness with mobility requirements, and ceremonial elements that marked participants as legitimate warriors engaged in sacred rather than merely secular conflict while distinguishing honorable combat from banditry or criminal violence. The moral education components that shaped warrior character included instruction in ethical principles governing treatment of enemies, civilians, and allies during military operations, while emphasizing personal honor, collective responsibility, and divine service as motivating factors that transcended individual survival and material gain through dedication to cosmic and social purposes that provided meaning and direction for military activities. The religious observances that sanctified warrior participation in flower war conflicts included prayer and ritual purification before combat, invocation of divine protection and guidance during fighting, and ceremonial thanksgiving after successful completion of military missions while maintaining spiritual relationships that connected individual warrior service to cosmic processes and divine will that governed universal harmony. The social integration mechanisms that connected warrior achievements to community recognition included public ceremonies celebrating successful fighters, integration of military accomplishments into family honor and social status, and cultural transmission of warrior values to younger generations who would continue imperial military traditions while adapting to changing circumstances and evolving strategic requirements. The psychological support systems that sustained warrior morale during difficult campaigns included brotherhood relationships among fellow fighters, religious assurance regarding divine protection and cosmic purpose, and community celebration of military service that provided meaning and recognition for dangerous activities that required personal sacrifice for collective benefit and imperial success. The career development pathways that enabled advancement within military hierarchies included systematic progression through warrior ranks based on demonstrated competence and achievement, while providing opportunities for specialization in particular military skills, leadership responsibilities, and administrative functions that could utilize veteran experience for training newer warriors and improving overall military effectiveness. The diplomacy of war, the sophisticated diplomatic protocols that governed flower war arrangements, required extensive negotiations between competing political authorities regarding combat schedules, participant selection, victory conditions, and post-conflict obligations while maintaining respectful relationships despite ongoing military competition that demanded careful balance between aggressive pursuit of imperial objectives and preservation of long-term strategic relationships. The challenge procedures that initiated flower war conflicts included formal diplomatic communications that proposed specific combat arrangements while providing opportunities for negotiation regarding timing, location, participant numbers, and special conditions that might be required due to particular circumstances affecting one or more of the involved parties' ability to engage in standard ritualized warfare according to established protocols and traditional expectations. The arbitration mechanisms that resolve disputes regarding flower war conduct included neutral observers from non-participating states whose authority was recognized by all involved parties while ensuring fair adjudication of disagreements regarding rule violations, victory claims, and appropriate compensation for damages or injuries that exceeded normal expectations for ritualized combat conducted according to established protocols and traditional standards. The prisoner exchange protocols that governed post-conflict activities included systematic procedures for transferring captured warriors between opposing forces according to predetermined ratios and quality assessments, while ensuring that both sides received appropriate compensation for their military efforts through acquisition of sacrificial victims whose religious value reflected the skill and courage demonstrated during honorable combat. The tribute negotiation processes that determined economic obligations resulting from Flower War outcomes included careful assessment of defeated party capabilities and resources while establishing payment schedules and commodity specifications that could be fulfilled without causing economic disruption or social instability that might undermine future military cooperation and continued participation in ritualized warfare systems. The alliance coordination activities that involved multiple political entities in complex Flower War relationships included management of competing interests and conflicting obligations while maintaining overall balance within regional political systems that required careful diplomacy to prevent minor conflicts from escalating into major warfare that could threaten established political arrangements and economic relationships. The territorial boundary negotiations that resulted from Flower War settlements included clarification of political jurisdictions and resource access rights while avoiding permanent territorial transfers that could destabilize regional balance and create ongoing sources of conflict that might interfere with continued ritualized warfare and cooperative diplomatic relationships between neighboring political authorities. The commercial regulation agreements that protected trade relationships during Flower War periods included provisions for maintaining merchant safety and market access while ensuring that economic activities could continue despite ongoing military competition that required coordination between military and commercial interests to prevent conflicts that could damage beneficial economic relationships. The religious coordination protocols that synchronized ceremonial activities with Flower War schedules included planning of major festivals and sacrificial ceremonies that required adequate supplies of enemy captives while coordinating religious observances among participating communities to ensure that sacred obligations could be fulfilled through cooperative rather than competitive approaches to ritual requirements.
The succession recognition procedures that involved Flower War validation of new rulers included military testing of leadership candidates through combat performance, while providing mechanisms for establishing political legitimacy through demonstrated warrior competence that could command respect from both domestic populations and foreign political authorities, whose recognition was essential for effective governance. The conflict resolution mechanisms that addressed violations of Flower War protocols included mediation procedures involving neutral parties and established precedents while providing alternatives to unlimited warfare that could maintain diplomatic relationships despite disagreements regarding proper conduct and appropriate responses to alleged violations of established agreements and traditional expectations. The intelligence sharing arrangements that facilitated Flower War coordination included agreed-upon procedures for communicating regarding combat preparations, participant readiness, and scheduling modifications while maintaining operational security regarding sensitive military information that could provide unfair advantages or compromise the balanced competition that characterized properly conducted ritualized warfare. The Tlacaelel resistance, the independent confederation of Tlacaelel, represented the most significant challenge to Aztec imperial expansion through Flower War systems, as their democratic political organization, geographic advantages, planned military innovations enabled sustained resistance to imperial pressure while demonstrating that alternative political arrangements could successfully compete with Aztec methods and maintain autonomy despite constant military pressure and diplomatic isolation. The geographical advantages that supported Tlacaelel resistance included mountainous terrain that favored defensive warfare against imperial expeditions while providing natural barriers that complicated Aztec logistics and enabled concentrated defense of key positions using superior knowledge of local terrain features and seasonal conditions that could be exploited for tactical advantage against larger but less familiar enemy forces. The political organization that strengthened Tlacaelel military effectiveness included democratic decision-making processes that could rapidly mobilize community resources for defense while maintaining high morale through participatory governance that connected individual warrior service to collective self-determination and cultural preservation rather than mere obedience to distant imperial authority and tribute obligations. The military innovations that enabled effective resistance to imperial pressure included development of specialized tactics adapted to local terrain conditions, creation of professional officer corps that could coordinate complex defensive operations, and establishment of alliance relationships with other independent communities that could provide mutual support against common imperial threats and diplomatic pressure. The economic independence that supported sustained resistance included diversified agricultural production that could survive siege warfare and trade disruption while maintaining craft specialization and commercial relationships that provided access to essential military supplies and luxury goods without dependence on Aztec-controlled trade networks that could be manipulated for political pressure. The cultural identity that motivated resistance efforts included preservation of traditional religious practices, political institutions, and social customs that distinguished Tlacaelel civilization from imperial culture while providing meaning and purpose for military sacrifice and community cooperation necessary for maintaining independence despite enormous pressure for accommodation and integration. The alliance strategies that enhanced defensive capabilities included diplomatic relationships with other independent communities and even Spanish conquistadors whose military technology and political objectives could be aligned with Tlacaelel interests despite cultural differences and competing long-term objectives that required careful management to prevent exploitation or betrayal by temporary allies. The intelligence networks that provided advance warning of imperial military preparations included merchants, refugees, and diplomatic contacts who could gather information about Aztec plans while maintaining communication with other independent communities whose coordinated resistance efforts could complicate imperial strategic planning and force division of military resources among multiple threatened areas. The defensive preparations that enabled successful resistance to imperial expeditions included fortification of strategic positions, stockpiling of weapons and supplies, and training of citizen soldiers who could supplement professional warriors during major conflicts while maintaining economic and social activities necessary for community survival during extended periods of military pressure and diplomatic isolation. The diplomatic initiatives that sought to expand resistance movements included appeals to other independent communities and foreign powers whose interests might align with Tlacaelel objectives while providing alternatives to accommodation with imperial demands that could preserve political autonomy and cultural integrity despite enormous pressure for integration into Aztec imperial systems. The propaganda campaigns that strengthened popular support for resistance efforts included cultural celebrations of independence and military heroism while emphasizing religious and political values that distinguished Tlacaelel society from imperial culture and provided justification for continued sacrifice and community cooperation despite material hardships and military dangers. The successor preparation activities that ensured continuity of resistance leadership included training of young political and military leaders who could maintain defensive capabilities and community morale while preserving essential knowledge and skills necessary for effective governance and military organization during periods of crisis and transition. The economics of ritualized war, the economic calculations that made flower war systems preferable to total warfare, included careful analysis of costs associated with maintaining large armies, administering conquered territories, and reconstructing devastated regions while comparing these expenses to benefits derived from tribute payments, prisoner acquisition, and maintained trade relationships that could be preserved through limited rather than unlimited military conflict. The cost-benefit assessments that guided imperial military planning included evaluation of resources required for flower war campaigns versus potential returns through tribute collection, prisoner capture, and enhanced diplomatic positions while considering long-term sustainability of various military strategies and their impact on overall imperial wealth and administrative capability. The tribute optimization strategies that emerged from flower war practices included establishment of payment, schedules, and commodity specifications that could maximize imperial revenue while maintaining tributary capacity for continued production and payment without causing economic collapse that would eliminate valuable sources of ongoing wealth and political cooperation. The labor acquisition objectives that motivated prisoner-taking activities included securing skilled workers for imperial construction projects, agricultural development, and craft production while obtaining sacrificial victims whose religious value enhanced imperial prestige and divine favor essential for continued political legitimacy and military success. The trade preservation mechanisms that protected commercial relationships during military conflict included diplomatic guarantees for merchant safety and market access, while ensuring that economic activities could continue despite ongoing political competition that might otherwise threaten beneficial commercial arrangements and economic prosperity for all participating communities. The resource allocation strategies that balanced military and civilian needs included careful distribution of imperial wealth between military preparations, infrastructure development, and religious observances while maintaining adequate reserves for emergency situations that might require increased military expenditures or economic support for tributary communities facing natural disasters or external threats. The technological development incentives that resulted from military competition included innovation in weapons design, tactical methods, and logistical systems, while encouraging scientific and engineering advances that could enhance both military capabilities and civilian prosperity through improved understanding of natural processes and technical capabilities. The agricultural protection policies that maintained food security during military campaigns included strategic planning for seasonal warfare that avoided disruption of planting and harvest activities, while ensuring adequate food supplies for both military forces and civilian populations whose nutritional needs required priority despite resource demands for military operations. The craft industry support mechanisms that preserved specialized production capabilities included protection of skilled artisans whose work contributed to imperial wealth and cultural achievement, while maintaining access to raw materials and market opportunities despite political conflicts that might threaten commercial relationships and production capacity. The financial management systems that funded ongoing military activities included taxation procedures, tribute collection methods, and resource stockpiling practices that could support extended military campaigns while maintaining economic stability and administrative efficiency necessary for effective imperial governance and continued territorial expansion. The investment priorities that guided imperial economic policy included balance between military expenditures and infrastructure development, while ensuring that both immediate security needs and long-term economic growth could be maintained through strategic allocation of imperial resources and careful management of tributary relationships. The market stability measures that protected economic relationships during periods of military activity included diplomatic guarantees for commercial neutrality and trade route security, while preventing economic warfare that could damage beneficial relationships and reduce overall prosperity for all participating communities, regardless of their political affiliations.
The sacred mathematics of combat. The sophisticated scoring systems that determined victory conditions in flower war conflicts included complex point calculations based on prisoner quality, individual combat performance, and unit coordination, while establishing objective criteria for measuring military success that transcended simple casualty counts or territorial conquest and reflected cultural values regarding honorable warfare and divine service. The prisoner classification methods that assessed captive value included evaluation of enemy rank, fighting ability, and social status, while determining appropriate exchange ratios and ceremonial significance for different categories of captured warriors whose religious and economic value required careful assessment for proper utilization in sacrificial ceremonies and imperial labor projects. The combat evaluation procedures that measured individual warrior performance included systematic observation of fighting techniques, prisoner capture success, and leadership capabilities, while providing data for promotion decisions and unit assignments that could optimize military effectiveness through proper utilization of available talent and demonstrated competence. The statistical analysis techniques that guided strategic planning included mathematical modeling of combat outcomes, resource requirements, and probable casualties, while enabling imperial commanders to make informed decisions regarding campaign objectives, force allocation, and logistical support necessary for successful military operations within established flower war parameters. The calendar coordination calculations that synchronized military activities with religious observances included astronomical computations that determined auspicious timing for combat, initiation, and ceremonial requirements for sacrificial activities, while ensuring that military planning aligned with cosmic cycles and divine expectations regarding proper timing for sacred warfare. The territorial assessment methods that evaluated potential targets for flower war campaigns included geographic analysis, population estimates, and resource evaluations, while determining feasibility of various military objectives and probable outcomes based on available intelligence regarding enemy capabilities and strategic circumstances. The logistics planning computations that supported extended military operations included calculations of food requirements, transportation capacity, and supply route security, while ensuring adequate provisioning for combat forces and support personnel throughout campaign duration, despite challenging terrain and potential enemy interference with supply lines. The casualty prediction models that informed military decision-making included historical analysis of previous combat outcomes and statistical projections of probable losses, while enabling commanders to assess risks and benefits associated with various tactical approaches and strategic objectives within acceptable parameters for imperial military operations. The alliance contribution assessments that measured tributary military support included evaluation of troop quality, equipment provision, and logistical assistance, while determining appropriate credit and obligations for various political entities whose participation in flower war campaigns contributed to overall imperial military capabilities and strategic success. The economic impact calculations that evaluated military campaign costs included assessment of direct expenditures, opportunity costs,
and potential returns while providing frameworks for strategic decision-making regarding resource allocation and campaign objectives that could maximize imperial benefits while minimizing financial burden and administrative complexity. The training efficiency measurements that optimized warrior preparation included systematic evaluation of instructional methods, practice outcomes, and skill development while enabling improvement of military education systems that could enhance combat effectiveness and reduce casualties through superior preparation and tactical competence. The intelligence value assessments that guided information collection priorities included analysis of strategic significance, reliability factors, and operational utility while ensuring that limited intelligence resources could be allocated effectively for maximum benefit to imperial planning and decision-making processes regarding military operations and diplomatic initiatives. The transformation of war, the evolution of flower war practices over time reflected changing strategic circumstances, technological developments, and political pressures that required adaptation of traditional ritualized combat systems while maintaining essential religious and cultural functions that distinguished honorable warfare from mere conquest and provided meaning and legitimacy for continued military activities within Mesoamerican civilization. The technological adaptations that modified traditional combat methods included incorporation of new weapon systems, improved protective equipment, and enhanced communication techniques while preserving fundamental emphasis on prisoner capture and ritualized combat procedures that maintain sacred character of flower war conflicts despite technological advancement and tactical innovation. The strategic refinements that enhanced military effectiveness included development of more sophisticated logistics systems, improved intelligence gathering methods, and enhanced coordination between multiple military units while maintaining traditional emphasis on individual warrior honor and divine service that provided motivation and cultural legitimacy for continued military excellence and imperial expansion. The diplomatic innovations that improved conflict management included creation of more flexible negotiation procedures, enhanced arbitration mechanisms, and improved communication protocols while preserving essential respect for enemy dignity and cultural autonomy that distinguished flower war diplomacy from purely exploitative imperial relationships based on force rather than mutual recognition. The religious modifications that adapted ceremonial requirements to changing circumstances included adjustment of sacrificial procedures, calendar coordination methods, and divine authorization protocols while maintaining essential spiritual functions that connected military activities to cosmic purposes and divine will essential for cultural legitimacy and popular support. The political integrations that incorporated flower war outcomes into broader imperial administration included systematic procedures for managing tributary relationships, coordinating alliance obligations, and balancing competing interests while preserving local autonomy and cultural diversity that distinguished Aztec imperial methods from purely assimilative conquest systems. The cultural exchanges that resulted from regular military interaction included adoption of superior military techniques, artistic traditions, and technological innovations while facilitating peaceful transfer of knowledge and skills that could benefit all participating civilizations through cooperative rather than purely competitive relationships despite ongoing political rivalry. The educational developments that enhanced warrior training included establishment of specialized schools, improvement of instructional methods, and systematic preservation of military knowledge while ensuring that essential skills and cultural values could be transmitted effectively to new generations of fighters who would continue imperial military traditions. The administrative improvements that supported expanded military operations included development of more efficient logistics systems, enhanced record-keeping methods, and improved coordination between military and civilian authorities while maintaining effective governance despite increased complexity resulting from territorial expansion and political diversification. The economic optimizations that reduced military costs while maintaining effectiveness included improved resource allocation methods, enhanced tribute collection systems, and better integration of military and commercial activities while ensuring that imperial wealth could support continued expansion without unsustainable financial burden or administrative complexity. The intelligence enhancements that provided superior strategic information included expanded network operations, improved analysis techniques, and better coordination between various information sources while enabling more effective planning and decision-making regarding military operations and diplomatic initiatives throughout the imperial territory. The legacy preservation activities that maintained institutional memory included documentation of successful techniques, training of replacement personnel, and establishment of succession procedures that could ensure continuity of military capabilities despite personnel changes and evolving strategic circumstances that required adaptation while preserving essential knowledge and cultural values. Through the carefully choreographed violence of the Flower Wars, the Aztec Empire demonstrated that sophisticated civilizations could develop alternatives to total warfare that served multiple strategic purposes while preserving essential cultural values and religious observances that provided meaning and legitimacy for military activities within complex political systems that balanced imperial expansion with respect for enemy dignity and local autonomy. The Flower War legacy thus reveals that effective military strategy required not only tactical competence and technological capability, but also diplomatic skill, cultural sensitivity and religious understanding that could transform potentially destructive conflict into beneficial competition that served cosmic purposes while advancing practical political objectives through honor rather than mere conquest. In the end, the sacred mathematics of ritualized combat provided framework for managing political competition that honored both divine requirements and human dignity, while demonstrating that military excellence could serve civilization rather than destroying it when guided by wisdom, restraint, and respect for universal principles that transcended immediate tactical advantages and temporary political gains.